Martin Harlow was a man of the land. He had the kind of voice that stopped people in their tracks, rich and honeyed, with a timbre that spoke of long days under the sun and nights spent dreaming under starlit skies. Singing came as naturally to him as breathing. He often joked that he'd been singing longer than he'd been talking. Martin grew up on the Harlow family farm in a sleepy Midwestern town called Maple Hollow. The town, surrounded by golden fields of wheat and corn, was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, for better or worse. Martin's upbringing was steeped in country music. His parents played records as they worked around the farm, and his grandmother's old guitar had become his most cherished possession. Music was an escape for Martin, but it was also a promise to himself, to one day rise above the confines of Maple Hollow while still honoring the land and family that shaped him. He spent countless hours strumming on the porch, letting the melodies carry his dreams to the horizon. High school had been bittersweet. Martin had been in love with Claire Jennings, the town's golden girl, with her bright blue eyes and a smile that could light up a room. They dated through junior year, dreaming of a future together. Martin loved how Claire's laughter filled the air like a melody, and for a time he thought she loved him with the same intensity. They'd spend evenings walking by the river, dreaming of what their lives might hold. But everything changed when Jackson Delaney entered the picture. Jackson was the son of a wealthy developer who had recently moved to Maple Hollow, his presence an anomaly in the tight-knit farming town. With his perfectly pressed shirts, polished charm, and a shiny red convertible, Jackson turned heads wherever he went. Claire was no exception. She began spending more time with Jackson, her excuses to Martin becoming vaguer with each passing day. The shift came to a head one summer evening at the annual town fair. Martin had planned to surprise Claire with a song he'd written for her, but instead, he found her laughing beside Jackson, her hand resting on his arm. The sight was a punch to the gut. That night, Claire pulled Martin aside, her expression a mixture of guilt and determination. "Martin, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You know I care about you, but Jackson can give me things you can't. Opportunities, stability, a future." Martin's heart shattered as her words sank in. "A future?" he repeated, his voice thick with disbelief. "Claire, we talked about our future. We dreamed of it together. What about everything we've shared?" "I'll always cherish that," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "But I need more than dreams, Martin. I need security." Anger and heartbreak warred within him. He felt betrayed, but more than that, he felt inadequate. Jackson's wealth and connections had stolen the one thing Martin thought was unshakable. That night, he returned to the farm and poured his pain into his music. He strummed his grandmother's guitar until his fingers ached, the raw emotions spilling out in a torrent of melody and lyrics. The weeks that followed were filled with tension. Jackson seemed to delight in flaunting his new relationship with Claire, parading her around town as if to underscore Martin's loss. Martin, meanwhile, kept his head down, channeling his anguish into songwriting. His friends, including Ben Turner, rallied around him, offering words of encouragement. "She'll regret this one day, Martin," Ben said, patting his shoulder. "You've got something Jackson will never have, heart, and you'll show the world what you're made of." Martin wasn't sure he believed it, but the words planted a seed of determination. If he couldn't win Claire back, he'd at least prove to himself, and the rest of Maple Hollow, that he was more than a heartbroken farm boy. His songs grew richer, deeper, and more poignant, capturing the attention of anyone who heard them. While Jackson and Claire basked in the spotlight of their fleeting romance, Martin quietly worked toward something greater, the pain driving him forward like a storm over open fields. After high school, Martin took on the responsibility of running the family farm with his father, Joe. The farm was struggling. Rising costs and falling crop prices meant there was always more month than money. The weight of responsibility pressed on Martin's shoulders, but his dreams of a music career refused to die. On weekends, he played gigs at the local tavern and sang at county fairs, his voice winning him a modest but loyal following. The locals saw him as one of their own, a beacon of hope for the town. One fateful night, a talent scout named Sarah Montrose happened to be passing through Maple Hollow. She'd stopped at the tavern for a drink and was instantly captivated by Martin's performance. After the show, she approached him with an offer. A contract with her talent agency in Nashville. "You've got something special," Sarah said, her green eyes flashing with excitement. "With the right team behind you, you could be a star." It was the opportunity Martin had been waiting for, but it came with a heavy cost. Signing the contract meant leaving the farm and his family behind. Joe Harlow, though proud of his son's talent, was hesitant. "The farm's in your blood passed down to you, son," he said. "Don't forget who you are and where you come from. But I will respect whatever decision you make, son." Martin spent sleepless nights debating the decision. The farm had been his entire world, and the idea of leaving Joe and his younger sister Lily to shoulder the burden alone filled him with guilt. But deep down, he knew this was his chance, the break he had been waiting for. He had to believe that pursuing his dream would eventually bring something good back to the people he loved. With his father's reluctant blessing, Martin packed his bags and headed for Nashville, carrying with him the weight of his family's hopes and his own dreams of making it big. As he drove away, the sight of the golden fields fading into the distance stayed with him, a reminder of what he was fighting for. On his dashboard, he placed a small photo of his family and the farmhouse, a talisman to keep him grounded no matter how far the road took him. Nashville was everything Martin had imagined and more. Bright lights, crowded streets, and the hum of ambition in the air. Sarah introduced him to producers, vocal coaches, and a whirlwind of industry professionals who promised to help him refine his craft. But even as he began recording his first demo, he never let himself forget the lessons he had learned on the farm. Hard work, resilience, and staying true to his roots. Those lessons, he hoped, would be the foundation of his success. The next 5 years were a whirlwind. Martin's natural talent and magnetic stage presence quickly gained him a following. He released an album that climbed the country charts and toured across the country, performing in packed venues. Fans would line up for hours to hear him sing, their faces lighting up when he hit the stage. But the cost of success was steep. The long tours and relentless schedule left little time for anything else. Martin called home often, checking in on the farm and his family, but the distance weighed on him. His father's health was declining, and his younger sister, Lily, was struggling to keep the farm running. Lily's voice would often break over the phone as she updated him about overdue bills, broken machinery, and Joe's increasing frailty. Martin felt the ache of guilt with every conversation, knowing he couldn't be in two places at once. The once vivid picture of home in Martin's mind grew hazy as the demands of his career consumed him. One night, after a particularly exhausting show, Martin sat in his hotel room staring at his guitar. It felt heavier in his hands, not because of its weight, but because of what it represented. For every sold-out venue, there was a moment missed back home. He began to question if the price of his dreams was worth the cost. One day, Martin received a call from his childhood friend, Ben Turner. "Martin, there's something you need to know," Ben said, his voice tense. "Your cousin Joel, he's trying to sell the farm. He's been meeting with developers." Martin's blood ran cold. Joel had always been envious of Martin's success, but to betray the family like this was unthinkable. He thought of his father, who had worked himself to the bone to keep the farm alive, and Lily, who was doing everything she could to hold it together. Anger and determination welled up in him. This farm wasn't just land, it was the soul of their family. Martin finished his last tour for the year and rushed back to Maple Hollow. As he drove through the familiar roads, the sight of the golden fields and the weathered farmhouse rekindled a fire in his heart. He wasn't just coming home, he was coming back to fight for what mattered most. Months after returning home and beginning the arduous process of saving the family farm, Martin found himself at the local grocery store on a quiet Saturday morning. He was picking up supplies for the farm, lost in thought as he scanned the shelves when he heard a familiar voice. "Martin?" He turned and froze. It was Claire. Her hair was shorter now, a sleek bob framing her still striking blue eyes. But there was a new weight to her gaze, a tiredness that hadn't been there before. Beside her stood a little girl, no more than 5 years old, with curly brown hair and the same piercing blue eyes as her mother. "Claire," Martin said, his voice catching. He wasn't sure what else to say. Claire gave him a small smile, one laced with hesitation. It's been a while. Martin nodded, glancing at the child, who clung to Claire's leg and peeked at him curiously. It has. How are you? We're okay, Claire said, her smile faltering. Things have been different. Jackson and I divorced a year ago. Martin wasn't sure how to respond. Part of him felt vindicated, but another part felt a pang of sympathy. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry to hear that. Claire shrugged lightly. Life happens. This is Emily, by the way, my daughter. She gestured to the little girl, who offered a shy smile. Martin crouched slightly to her level, giving her a warm smile. Hi, Emily, I'm Martin. It's nice to meet you. Emily giggled softly and hid behind Claire again. Claire laughed quietly. She's a little shy. There was an awkward pause before Claire spoke again. Do you maybe want to grab a coffee? Maybe catch up? Martin hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure. That sounds good. How about Dave's diner? They ended up at the small diner down the street, Emily busy with a coloring book, while Martin and Claire sat across from each other, cups of coffee between them. The conversation started tentatively, with talk of the weather and the latest happenings in Maple Hollow, but gradually it deepened. Claire shared how her marriage to Jackson had unraveled, his workaholism, the constant pressure to keep up appearances, and the growing distance between them. I realized I'd been chasing the wrong kind of stability, she admitted, her voice heavy with regret. I thought money and security were everything, but it came at too high a cost. Boy, was I so wrong. Martin listened quietly, his feelings a mixture of empathy and old hurt. It sounds like you've been through a lot, he said finally. Claire nodded. I have, but it's made me stronger. And Emily, she's my whole world now. She glanced at her daughter, her expression softening. For the first time in years, Martin felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since Claire had left. Hope. As they talked, he realized that while the past couldn't be changed, perhaps the future held possibilities he hadn't dared to consider. After talking a bit longer, they said goodbye. As they walk away, Claire turns to Martin saying, "Hope to see you again soon." Martin's heart skipped a beat. The following day, while dropping Emily off at school, Claire overheard Jackson speaking with Joel in hushed tones near the parking lot. Something about their body language and the way they glanced around made her pause. Her heart sank when she caught fragments of their conversation. Once we get the papers signed, the developers will wire the money, Jackson said, his voice low but tinged with impatience. It's just a farm. Martin will get over it. Joel chuckled. He's too busy playing farmer hero to see what's happening. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. Claire's stomach twisted as she realized what they were planning. Jackson and Joel were colluding to sell the Harlow family farm out from under Martin. Anger surged within her, followed closely by guilt. She thought of how much Martin had sacrificed to save that farm, and how his music had carried the weight of his family's hopes. She couldn't let this happen. That evening, Claire called Martin. Her voice was steady, but he could hear the urgency beneath it. Martin, we need to talk. It's about Jackson and Joel. Martin drove over to Claire's house, his mind racing. When he arrived, Claire ushered him inside and quickly explained what she had overheard. Her words hit Martin like a freight train. They're trying to sell the farm, Claire said, her blue eyes blazing with determination. You can't let them get away with this. Martin clenched his fists, anger and betrayal coursing through him. I can't believe Joel would stoop this low. And Jackson, after everything he's already taken from me, first you, now my farm. Claire reached out, placing a hand on his arm. You have to fight back, Martin. This farm is your family's legacy, and you're not alone in this. You have me and this town. For a moment their eyes met, and Martin saw the sincerity in Claire's gaze. It wasn't just about the farm, it was about redemption, about standing up for what was right. Martin nodded, a newfound resolve hardening in his chest. I'll stop them, no matter what it takes. Martin found himself at the local grocery store on a quiet Saturday morning. He was picking up supplies for the farm, lost in thought as he scanned the shelves, when he heard familiar voices. It was people of the town. Many of them tells Martin he wasn't alone in his fight to save the farm. News of Joel's betrayal and the developer's scheme spread quickly through the small community of Maple Hollow. The Harlow farm was more than land to the townsfolk. It was a symbol of their shared history and resilience. Soon, neighbors began showing up to help, offering their time, resources, and unwavering support. But Martin knew that goodwill alone wouldn't stop the legal battle looming on the horizon. He decided to do what he did best: use his music to bring people together. Martin organized a benefit concert in the town square, a rallying cry to save the Harlow legacy. Martin receives huge support from nearby county. The event was electric. String lights hung from trees, children ran through the crowd with sparklers, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Martin took the stage with his guitar, his voice carrying over the gathered crowd. He poured his heart into every note, telling the story of the farm, the sacrifices his family had made, and the importance of standing up for what mattered most. His songs brought tears to eyes and hope to hearts. By the end of the night, the benefit had raised enough funds to cover immediate legal fees and repairs for the farm. But the real victory was the unity it inspired among the townsfolk. They pledged to stand by Martin, ready to fight for the farm as if it were their own. A turning point came when Eleanor Barnes, a retired lawyer who had grown up in Maple Hollow, took to the stage to announce that she is willing to take on Martin's case pro bono. "This isn't just about the Harlow farm," she said. "It's about protecting what makes this town special." With Eleanor's expertise and the town's unwavering support, Martin felt a surge of hope. As the case moved forward, Martin continued to lean on his music and his community. Every step was a battle, but he knew he wasn't fighting alone. The farm was more than just land. It was a testament to perseverance, love, and the power of standing together. As the legal fight to save the Harlow farm escalated, Claire became increasingly involved, supporting Martin and leveraging her own resources to help. She decided to dig a little deeper. Claire still has privileges to her former home because of the custody agreement. Out of curiosity, she decided to review old footage from the security camera installed in the home that she once shared with Jackson. Claire made a chilling discovery. The camera feed revealed Joel visiting Jackson's house numerous times over the past year, well before her divorce from Jackson. She showed the footage to Martin, her voice trembling. "They've been plotting this together for a long time. This wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment decision. They've been planning to steal the farm from you more than a year." Martin watched the footage, his anger simmering into resolve. "They're not going to get away with this," he said. "We'll use this in court." Claire nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "I'll testify if I have to. They lied to everyone, including the mayor, to push this deal through." With the evidence in hand, Eleanor Barnes built a solid case against Joel and Jackson, accusing them of fraud and conspiracy. The trial became the talk of Maple Hollow, with townsfolk packing the courtroom to show their support for Martin. During the proceedings, the video footage became a key piece of evidence. Combined with documents Eleanor unearthed, showing forged signatures and falsified agreements, it painted a damning picture of the lengths Joel and Jackson had gone to in their pursuit of greed. When the mayor himself testified, stating that Jackson had lied about the legality of the sale, the case took a dramatic turn. The judge didn't hold back in his ruling. Both Joel and Jackson were found guilty of fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. As the courtroom erupted in cheers, Martin felt a wave of relief and gratitude. The farm was safe, justice had been served, and the support of his community had made all the difference. Standing outside the courthouse, Claire turned to him and smiled. "You did it," she said. "No," Martin replied, his voice filled with emotion. "We all did it." For the first time in years, Martin felt like his future was brighter than the horizon of golden fields surrounding Maple Hollow. After the courtroom victory that saved the Harlow farm, Martin knew he owed his community more than gratitude. The town's unwavering support had been the backbone of his success, and he wanted to repay their kindness in a meaningful way. Inspired by the unity forged during the fight for the farm, Martin decided to establish an annual fundraiser for Maple Hollow's community center, which had fallen into disrepair over the years. The first fundraiser was a grand event held in the town square. Martin took to the stage under a canopy of string lights, his guitar slung over his shoulder. As he sang, the crowd swayed, clapped, and cheered. The fundraiser wasn't just about raising money. It was about celebrating the spirit of Maple Hollow. By the end of the night, the community had raised enough funds to begin much-needed renovations to the center, ensuring it would remain a hub for the town's future generations. Claire stood in the crowd that evening, her daughter Emily clutching her hand. Watching Martin perform with such passion and purpose stirred something in her. After the event, she approached him, her expression a mix of admiration and regret. After the show, everyone said their goodbye. Claire approached Martin, with her heart racing and with fear consuming her. She opened her mouth. "Martin," her voice steady but soft, "I need to say something. I've carried the guilt of how I betrayed you in high school for years. I was wrong to leave you the way I did. You deserved better. And I'm so sorry." Martin looked at her, the weight of old wounds mingling with the warmth of newfound respect. "Claire," he said after a moment, his voice gentle, "I appreciate that, but we were young. People make mistakes, especially when they are young. What matters is who we are now. If it wasn't for my heartbreak, I would never gotten to opportunity to be in Nashville and travel the world, and became the man that I am now. So I thank you." Encouraged by his forgiveness, Claire smiled, her blue eyes shimmering. "You've become someone truly remarkable, Martin. Watching you fight for this town, for your family, it's inspiring." Martin hesitated, then took a step closer. "How about we start over?" he asked, his voice laced with hope. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" Claire's smile widened, her cheeks flushing. "I'd love that." As they stood beneath the glow of the fundraiser lights, the future seemed brighter than ever. Martin had found a way to honor his roots, give back to his town, and perhaps rediscover a love he thought was lost forever. The Harlow farm, the town of Maple Hollow, and Martin's music were no longer separate pieces of his life. They were all part of the same harmony. Thank you for listening to Green Tea Tales. If you enjoyed our delightful tale, please like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.